Hello, everyone. Andrew Kornfeld here. I just finished recording this incredible micro course, The Foundations of Remission, and I am so proud of what we have put together. This is the most comprehensive micro course ever created for inflammatory bowel disease, and I am so honored to have you on this journey. If you have any questions, you can always email us at the end. I want to encourage you to, as you go through the course, consider scheduling an admissions call with us if you would like. Otherwise, this is going to be a jammed, packed micro course. So I encourage you to take notes, but you're also going to have an opportunity to be able to get the slides, be able to pause it, be able to rewind. So take a deep breath, get some water, get a snack. Feel free to take stretch breaks during it. And again, let's dive into inflammatory bowel disease, the foundations of remission. Thank you so much. Hello. Welcome to Systema Health. Welcome to today's micro course. My name is Andrew Kornfeld, and today's micro course is called Inflammatory Bowel Disease, the Foundations of Remission. I'm going to be making myself a little bit smaller and moving myself around. This course is being sponsored by Systema Health, our company, and I will tell you that this is certainly the definitive Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, microscopic colitis, indeterminate colitis micro course. We cover all of the IBDs. And I want to tell you that you are absolutely in the right place. Whether you are suffering with IBD, whether it's a friend or a family member, if you've been recently diagnosed, if you've been suffering for years with no answers, you are in the right place. This can be the moment that you change your life forever, and you are about to see why. Here's a quote from Carey. He says, "I've had Crohn's for multiple decades with complications and surgeries. I have 2 scientific graduate degrees, and I can say this was the most dynamic and well put together presentation on IBD that I have ever seen." And that was super kind of Carey to tell us that and to put that together. This is in reference to the first version of this micro course. This is now the second and even improved version of this course. So again, I am so honored to have you. I'm so excited to have you. In fact, this free micro course is the most scientific, it's the most actionable, it is the most comprehensive ever created. My team and I have put hundreds of hours into this micro course, and I am going to give it my all. This is my entire life that I have devoted to inflammatory bowel disease and frankly other chronic health conditions and changing the healthcare system in the United States and around the world. And again, we are honored and excited to have you on this journey with us. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Andrew Kornfeld. I'm the founder of Systema Health. I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease that severely impacted me when I was 16 years old. My hair was falling out. I was extremely underweight. I was having enormous amounts of diarrhea. I was misdiagnosed for quite a long time. And so I really went through the ringer. I did have some incredible doctors at the time. They put me on some intensive immunosuppressive therapies, specifically 6-mercaptopurine. Some of you might be aware of. It's an older medication with a lot of side effects that's not generally used in pediatric Crohn's disease anymore, especially in young men. I did okay. I was able to matriculate to the University of California. I was able to kind of get back to some of the things that I loved, but I never fully achieved remission. I had studied neuroscience and psychology, and I became very interested in the mind and how stress was relating to my disease. But after I graduated, I became very sick again. I got into a significant flare. It was one of the hardest things I ever went through in my entire life. And I was, again, having 20 bowel movements a day. I was extremely fatigued, all the other symptoms that we know too well, those of us who have IBD. And then I made it a conscious decision. I was empowered. I knew how to research the science. And this was all the way back in 2014, guys. And I looked at the scientific literature, and lo and behold, all of the things that I was being told by my healthcare system, that diet didn't matter, that lifestyle was not as important, this is what they thought back in 2014, it just wasn't being supported by the scientific literature. I found out that there was a myriad of different interventions, dietary interventions, supplements and herbs, psychological interventions that could be taken in addition to, different Western medications. And I was able to strategically put together a robust protocol. I was able to navigate through my Western healthcare system and my integrative healthcare system and make a protocol that was based in science. And over the course of several months, very rigorous trial and error. For example, with my diet, it wasn't just about the foods that I was taking out. It was about the foods that I was incorporating. It was about when I was eating, how I was eating, what was the texture of the food. All of those things came together and it was overwhelming at first, and I made mistakes and it wasn't perfect or anything like that. But I started to notice a decrease in my bowel frequency. I started to notice that I was feeling better, I had more energy, and I was actually eventually able to come off this 6-mercaptopurine. I did eventually get into remission. I've been in remission now for 11 years and counting. I attended some medical school, but ultimately decided to build a company around inflammatory bowel disease. And that's where we are now. And again, I am so honored to have you on this journey and tell you what's ahead. So here's what we're going to cover in today's microcourse. We're first going to look at an introduction to IBD. We're all going to get on the same page. We're going to understand why this condition is spiraling out of control. We're going to do a little introduction to biology. So for those PhD biologists out there who don't need a refresher, you're welcome to skip section 2. But I think all of us, it's really, really important that patients are empowered, that we are extremely knowledgeable and we understand what is biologically going on, which leads into our next section, which is the pathogenesis of IBD. And I think this is probably one of the most clear, concise, but also comprehensive overviews of the latest understanding and pathogenesis of inflammatory bowel disease and the different molecular players that are involved. And if you don't get everything, if you don't understand everything, that is totally okay. You're going to be able to ask questions to us. You can email us. You can schedule a call with us if you want to, and you can get a copy of these slides. Then we're going to talk about how that biology directly applies to different interventions in inflammatory bowel disease. We're going to target that pathogenesis feedback loop that we're going to talk about in inflammatory bowel disease that you're going to understand. And you're going to learn more interventions in IBD than you've probably, ever come across. And I'm really excited. And then we're going to talk about in section 5, our philosophy and how to think about putting those interventions together. So we're going to literally give you the Legos. We're going to then tell you how you can put them together into a effective protocol. And then we're going to go through a little bit about how our program works, how Systema works, how you can take this further. And some of you will be more than enough. This will change your life, maybe a lot of you. And others will want to be part of this movement and part of this community on this journey directly with us. And whatever you choose, that is totally okay with us. We just want to provide this as just a taste of what we believe in and what we do at Systema Health to give you an idea, but also just as a service to our community, because you guys have been the bedrock of why this company exists. And frankly, I wouldn't be here without you guys either. We're going to tell you a little bit about some people who have changed their life in Systema Health. And then I'm going to tell you about a poem and read you a poem that I wrote called Remission as a Way of Life. And I think it'll inspire you. Okay? Listen up. Pay attention, take notes if you want. Again, the slides will be available. I believe that this will be unlike anything you've ever experienced. Now, I'm going to give you a friendly reminder. This presentation is for educational purposes only and does not serve as medical advice. Please do not make any changes to your healthcare protocol without first consulting your gastroenterologist, your primary care doctor. It is so critical that you work with these individuals and that they are your partners in this journey. And that's one big belief that we have at Systema Health, that we work with a myriad of different types of practitioners, of doctors, that this is actually the ecosystem that encompasses all of them. And it's really, really critical that you understand that and that you're very careful with what you do, because just as many things can be helpful, other things can be harmful. And it's totally one person could be totally different than the next. All right. So let's go through an introduction to IBD. What is IBD? I'm just going to move me over here. The IBDs are idiopathic. We don't know what causes them. They're incurable. And Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, as we know, are the most common. Crohn's disease is transmural, so it affects all of the different layers. Ulcerative colitis is superficial, so it only affects that most superficial layer of the mucosa in the lumen. And then we have what's called microscopic colitis, which is almost a separate disease, but is still an IBD. It's treated a little differently. If you have MC right now, this presentation is extremely relevant to you. Not everything is used in MC that is used in ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, but I think it's often not given enough attention and it's not taken seriously enough, because people with MC, with microscopic colitis, also have significant difficulties a lot of the time. And then we have indeterminate colitis, and that's just when we don't know if it's Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis. Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, indeterminate colitis, Microscopic colitis can be mild to extremely severe, often requiring hospitalization, surgery, immunosuppressive therapies. Symptoms include but are not limited to diarrhea, blood and mucus present in the stool, and painful cramping. And you guys know that's only the tip of the iceberg of the different symptoms that we can experience. Okay. And let's just take a look at literally why this condition is just spiraling out of control in Western countries and developing countries. In 1950, there was less than one case per 100,000 people. And now in 2020 and in 2025, 2026, moving on, this trend has continued. We see about 10 to 25 cases per 100,000. And this is probably an underestimate right now. And perhaps the incidence and prevalence has kind of leveled off. The prevalence has leveled off in Western countries and developed countries, but it is still really on a hockey stick trajectory in developing nations. Something needed to be done. Okay. And that's really why we created Systema. We have really put forward a new comprehensive model. We use a modality called systems-based health coaching, or SHC. We have done the research. We have looked through hundreds, if not thousands, of research papers. We use the latest technology, including artificial intelligence, to help synthesize this information. We have an incredible community of patients, of experts, the most advanced community in the entire world of IBD patients that are here waiting to love you and be on this journey with you. And the results have been absolutely incredible. When a patient becomes empowered and understands the science and then is able to build their protocol with their health team, we see incredible things. Clinical remission, significant reductions in symptoms, inflammatory markers down, lifelong friendships formed, and lives changed for the better. And we actually were able to study this. We conducted a scientific survey just a couple of years ago, and we were able to see that the average calprotectin went down from about almost 1,600 micrograms per gram to just under 200. And this is a significant result that we had, and we're actually working to conduct even more science right now to study the efficacy of our program. Very few programs actually look at efficacy and study this at all. It was an honor to present this at the Crohn's and Colitis Congress. We did present at the Crohn's and Colitis Congress, and we did publish in IBD and gastroenterology, and we try and attend the Crohn's and Colitis Congress every single year. We created Systema IBD, which is the subprogram of Systema. We created Systema IBD with the vision that the power resides within the IBD patient, and this individual has the profound ability to recapture their health through a science-based, strategic, and rational process of self-discovery, behavior change, and the cultivation of an environment conducive to healing. And that is so important, of us being able to build that environment, to create that environment around you that allows for healing to take place. So let's go. Here we are. Buckle up. We're going to go through some biology. This is going to be a review for a lot of you. This is going to be new to some of you, and that's okay. If you don't remember everything, if you don't get everything, that's okay. Again, you're going to take breaks. You can pause this video. You can rewind it if you need to, and also you'll have a chance to get a copy of the slides. So we're going to be looking at the atoms of life, small molecules, the small molecules that make up macromolecules, the cells that are composed of macromolecules, and the cells that then make organs and systems of the body. And there are many atoms that comprise life. 4 of the most common types are hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, and carbon. Now, you can see here that these are how molecules are drawn. You're going to see them drawn a little bit differently, but every time you see a change of direction, that implies there's a carbon atom there. And you can see, for example, that these red ones are oxygen, the blue ones on here are nitrogen. They have different ways that they bond to each other. They like to have different number of bonds, but everything we do, everything we interact is a molecule like this. Many of the medications you take, all of what is composed of biology. And we say that life is organic. This does not mean that you are shopping through the organic produce section of your grocery store. This means that life is composed of carbon. Now, these are some macromolecules that are relevant to biology and relevant to IBD. Phosphatidylcholine is something that makes up the barrier, the cell barrier. We have fiber, which is a type of carbohydrate. As you guys know, it's found in plant foods, fruits. Very, very important for feeding the microbiome. Starch is an important one too, that also feeds the microbiome, possibly in maladaptive ways for some of us. And then we have what's called the central dogma of biology. This is probably the most important fundamental thing. And the amount of people that just, again, don't even know that life is organic, they don't know what the term organic means. It means that life is composed of carbon. This is critical. Every single human on Earth should know this. And I think every human on Earth should know that DNA goes to RNA, which then goes to protein. Different proteins that are involved in IBD. One is called calprotectin. That's a measure of inflammation in the gut. It essentially looks at the movement of white blood cells in the mucosa. And then we have what's a notorious protein called tumor necrosis factor alpha, or TNF, which is like the target of different biologics like Remicade, Humira, etc. Okay. And here are some cells that are involved in gut inflammation. You can see macrophages and neutrophils. Those are a type of innate immune cell. An enterocyte is a cell that makes up the gut. These are cells that are bacterial organisms, bacillus, that make up the microbiome or microbiota. And then I have a neuron right here. And this is the primary cell that makes up the brain. Obviously, the brain is made up of other cells too, but how these neurons interact and connect with each other is really what makes us us in many ways. And it involves what's called the connectome of the brain. And again, you can see that there's these arrows that are pointing here. Everything is connected. We put a lot of time and thought into this slide of how we could sort of summarize biology in essentially one slide, so you guys could just reference it. When you see something later on in the mechanism of IBD and you don't know what it is, you can come back to this slide and look, okay? And really, the IBD comes down to the interaction of many different systems of the body, but three that I really want you to think about is the immune system, the digestive system, and the nervous system, and how these three interact with each other in inflammatory bowel disease. And you are going to see that throughout this presentation. So that was great. You did amazing. Thank you for hanging with me. I know that was fast, but we're going to keep moving through this micro course. So let's talk about the pathogenesis of IBD. So what causes IBD? It really is a perfect storm, and we don't quite understand it, but there are multiple players involved. The stress is involved in this, and that the evidence for that has really just continued to come out over the years. There are genetic predispositions. There are essentially different mutations in tight junction proteins, and we'll see that in immune cells. Obviously, there are microbiome correlates. People with IBD often have a vastly different microbiome than people who do not have IBD. The immune system obviously is involved here, as we know, and even the mitochondria might be involved in IBD. There was a lot of research that a few years ago, and that research has continued, and it is very interesting to see the mitochondria's role. It's almost a cell within a cell. It's its own ecosystem right there, okay? So the question is, how does the gut become inflamed? Well, here we have a schematic of the gut. Here's what's called the gut lumen. And you can see this is a cross-section of the small intestine right here. We can tell because there's essentially these folds right here. We don't see that in the colon. These are the folds of the gut called mucosa. There's villi that line the folds, these little protrusions right there, okay? And you can see that each villi is composed of these cells. Here's a villi up close. Each cell is called an enterocyte right here. And between these cells, we have what are called tight junction proteins. And these are the things that hold these cells together. Now, this is just looking at the small intestine. We can even see there's microvilli on top of here. So this is Crohn's disease right here, but this same mechanism also applies to ulcerative colitis. So here's a normal tight junction protein. And then in inflammatory bowel disease, what happens is that these tight junction proteins, for whatever reason, genetic predispositions, maybe it's a viral infection, again, caused by the perfect storm. We don't really understand what it is. If you have identical twins, only something like 10% or even 2% both have IBD, depending on if it's ulcerative colitis or Crohn's, which tells us that it's a lot more than genetics, guys. Okay. So bacterial organisms, there's a dysfunctional tight junction. The microbiome is up there. Even in the small intestine, there is a little bit of a microbiome. And food particles and bacterial organisms translocate from the gut lumen into an area called the lamina propria. And then when that comes in, the immune system is like, this isn't happening. And macrophages and neutrophils, there's been continued research with neutrophils, especially extracellular traps and these different parts of neutrophils that are involved in the innate immunity of IBD come in and are like, those bacteria cannot be in the lamina propria. And then unfortunately, the collateral damage as the immune cells are working to attack the bacteria, they cause collateral damage to the mucosa and the enterocytes, and that is what we see on colonoscopies, and that is what is causing the damage in inflammatory bowel disease. And I hope that was a clear explanation for you guys. This is why IBD is a vicious disease, because we have these dysfunctional tight junction proteins. There's leakage that is occurring right here. There's then an inflammatory cascade that happens. This leads to barrier damage. And guess what? When there's barrier damage, that causes more bacterial leakage, that causes more inflammation, that causes more barrier damage. And this is a feedback loop. And this is a tenet of systems thinking and systems theory that we will go through later on. And here is a schematic to just show you what is happening in IBD. We're not going to go through all of this, but there's different dendritic cells, interleukin 12 and IL-23. That's actually a target of a common biologic called Stelara. There's different T cells that become unregulated. And then essentially there's a better cytokine, an anti-inflammatory cytokine. The word cytokine, by the way, if I didn't explain that, that just means essentially an immune signaling protein. Okay, interleukin 10 is actually a regulatory cytokine, and sometimes there's actually genetic mutations in IL-10, which causes that unregulated T cell. And that leads to the inflammatory cascade, tumor necrosis factor alpha, which is the target of many medications, macrophages and neutrophils. Again, these neutrophil extracellular traps that are involved here. And that leads to reactive oxygen species and that barrier damage. And you're going to see how all of these different cytokines right here and immune cells are targeted in what we do in Systema IBD. And now I really want to talk about the critical role of the microbiota and the microbiome, and just to help you differentiate between those two real quick, okay? So what does the word microbiota mean? It means the community of microorganisms that live in and on our body. These include bacteria, viruses, fungi, things in the archaea domain, eukaryotic domains of life, like yeast. Now, literally, guys, there are so many of these microorganisms. There are 1.3 times more than your human cells. So it's quite amazing. And you often haven't heard the term microbiota because we just use the word microbiome. And I just wanted you guys to differentiate between these two. This means the collective genes of these microbiome. So at this point forward, we're just going to use the word microbiome just as we talk about all of this. Okay, it's just an important, just little clarification that we have. And literally there are 100 times more microbial genes than there are human genes, which is just absolutely crazy. And then I want to just get us on the same page about this term dysbiosis. What is this term dysbiosis? We've heard this a lot of times. It basically just means that there is an imbalance of certain microorganisms that we see on a mass population scale. We see that there are certain patterns in microorganisms, and in a dysbiosis environment, there's either a lack of diversity, which we often see in IBD, or there's a higher prevalence of microbes that are associated with inflammation or certain types of conditions, and there's less microbes that are associated with anti-inflammation or health. So we don't have a perfect term for it, and a dysbiosis for one person could be a relatively normal microbiome for another person. So let's just keep that in mind. But I just wanted to get us on the same page before we dive in to targeting IBD biology. This is a really great section. I'm so excited. So remember this, okay? Remember the translocation, the tight junctions that are dysfunctional, and then the macrophage and neutrophil that come in. Well, let's target this mechanism. The first mechanism is inflammation. The second mechanism is dysbiosis. And the third mechanism is permeability. And these are what we need to address in inflammatory bowel disease. And these all work in a cycle, guys. They all work in a cycle. Inflammation drives dysbiosis. Dysbiosis worsens permeability, and permeability causes inflammation. And we're going to dive deep into this, and you're going to see why, okay? So the first step is for us to first stop and control inflammation. Okay. Our next step is to modulate and nourish the microbiome. And number 3, we are going to work to repair and maintain the barrier. Okay. And so here again, we can see how these steps, how these mechanisms interact with each other in order for us to help you achieve IBD remission. So how do we apply the 3 steps in achieving IBD remission? Well, let's talk about step one, stopping and controlling inflammation. And we're going to define what stop and control means real quick. Stop really means to halt inflammation quickly. And in order for us to really stop inflammation, many times, not always, we need usually a Western intervention. This is often a corticosteroid. It could be like budesonide or prednisone. This could be a immunomodulatory medication or biologic. I think it's just really important for us to remember that these things, especially in our arena right here, are not life sentences. They are used to stop the inflammation, because when inflammation is just rampant, totally out of control, it is just really hard to nourish the microbiome. It's really hard to repair the barrier, and that vicious cycle that we saw before, it's really difficult to address this. So then what do we mean when we control the inflammation? Controlling inflammation is done through targeted anti-inflammatory herbs, supplements, dietary interventions. Even fasting can help to reboot the immune system. And you're going to see all of this on the next slide. I just wanted to, these slides right here is just to really differentiate between stop and control. And here we go into even further depth. If you were wondering if there was going to be any value in this micro course, here you go. Look at we don't have time to go through all of these, but look at all of these interventions that are science-based, that have been studied in inflammatory bowel disease, that can both help with stopping and controlling the inflammation. We talked about medications. We looked at food and tea, blueberries, green tea, EGCG. There's an extensive study that's been done with that compound, that specific flavonoid polyphenol that's found in green tea, avoiding inflammatory foods, specific lifestyle interventions, even devices like vagal nerve stimulation or hyperbaric oxygen has been studied. That was even specifically brought up at the Crohn's and Colitis Congress, that GIs are now sort of understanding that this is a thing that a tool that they have in their tool belt, and that you have now. Herbs, curcumin, boswellia, ginger, again, a million others. Supplements, specifically the king of antioxidants, glutathione and quercetin. Quercetin is probably my number one supplement. I really, really find a benefit from it. And I just want to take this moment and talk about these incredible polyphenols and flavonoids. I call them fantastic flavonoids. Now, flavonoids are common polyphenols. They're organic ringed compounds. And again, this is why I showed you, that initial biology so we can understand. But they have anti-inflammatory, immunomodulatory, and they have prebiotic effects. And we're going to go through that in a second. So it's actually one of the only non-carbohydrate prebiotics. And they have been found near ubiquitously in many edible plants. About 5,000 flavonoids have been identified, and there have been dozens of studies conducted on animal models in IBD. And I would say it's between dozens and hundreds. There's a lot of research about this. There's not a lot of human data. There's a lot of animal model studies with polyphenols and flavonoids in IBD and inflammatory conditions in general. But I really, really feel, guys, that this has not gotten enough attention. And check out this. I always wonder, this is a slide from our curriculum. Right here, this is the base structure of a flavonoid right here, and you can see that we have anthocyanins that are found in dark berries and fruits. EGCG, which is found in green tea, resveratrol, and amazing that's also been studied directly in IBD. The ones that are in green right here are the most relevant in IBD. For example, like this one that's found in soybeans and tofu is less relevant in IBD. Step 2, modulate and nourish the microbiome. I think that this is actually the largest conclusion that I have come to in my years of IBD. I used to be very against modulating the microbiome, and I was all about nourishing it. And I really found that specific ways to modulate the microbiome, and I'm going to explain what that is. Modulating means that we're using potentially an antibiotic, like even rifaximin. Rifaximin is like a pretty safe antibiotic that's been studied in ulcerative colitis. I'd say use it rarely, or even other antibiotics in really serious situations. Sometimes you just need a reset and you need to be able to kill things off. I was totally against antibiotics, and I was also pretty against antimicrobial herbs such as like oregano or berberine or things like that. I just found that people really mess themselves up with these things. And as the years have gone forward, I have found that in selective cases, sometimes it is really, really important to incorporate these antimicrobial herbs, or even rifaximin, or even a more intensive antibiotic, depending on what's going on, especially when we just can't get inflammation under control, when just like nothing is working. This is one tool in our belt that we have. And I would say, probably the easiest way to modulate the microbiome is either through fasting or modulating carbohydrates, specifically starches. And that is the basis of SCD, or the specific carbohydrate diet. And that whole diet is based on modulating the microbiome. And, I follow principles of SCD. I don't eat a ton of starches all the time. And this is a very, very useful tool for me. But that diet is a little bit outdated because it doesn't really involve nourishing the microbiome. So you must modulate and then nourish through probiotics, prebiotics, flavonoids, polyphenols, fiber-based interventions, or even FMT. And we're going to go through all of those on the next slide. But this is really, think about the difference between modulate and nourish. And I would say for me, I have not taken an antibiotic in maybe 12 years or something like that. It's been a very, very long time, maybe even longer than that. And the way that I have modulated my microbiome is through fasting and through modulating the complex carbohydrates. Okay. And that, again, that is helping with dysbiosis. That's helping with kind of, again, clearing the slate and then nourishing, getting rid of the bad guys, nourishing the good ones. Oversimplified, very, very oversimplified, but sometimes we just need to think about it in slightly simpler terms as we are navigating the complexity of IBD. Again, here we go. So many different interventions, probiotic supplements, fecal microbial transplant. Again, watching complex carbohydrates. We can think about even some prebiotic supplements. Again, I'm more of a fan of getting these from food when you can. Fermentable fiber and flavonoids, blueberries, sunchoke, squash, mushrooms, probiotic foods, huge fan. Kimchi, miso, sauerkraut, yogurt, kefir, kombucha. I'm a big fan safely consuming raw fermented dairy when you can. Sometimes I can tolerate it and sometimes I can't. Even that is like day by day. And this is a process of learning yourself, guys, and learning what works for you and what doesn't. Lifestyle, sleep, exercise, meditation, medications even. It's even thought that mesalamine, for example, which is a 5-ASA medication, might have a positive effect on the microbiome. And, probiotic supplements, again, I want you to encourage you to pick probiotic supplements that have actually been studied in IBD. Guys, there are so many probiotic supplements out there that don't have any evidence in IBD that people take. And I'm like, why not pick the strains? These are examples of specific strains like Lactobacillus plantarum 299V. These specific species and strains that have been studied in IBD, E. coli Nisol 1917, which is it's kind of hard to find and hard to acquire, and I actually haven't tried it at this point, but it has been extensively studied. Visbiome is another one that has been studied in IBD, not effective in Crohn's disease, primarily effective in ulcerative colitis and pouchitis. So how do these prebiotics work? You might just be wondering. So we have specific fruits and vegetables. There's so many more things we can put here, but I just gave the example of like beets and mangoes and avocados and blueberries, mushrooms even. That's a beautiful chanterelle mushroom right there, and onions. These essentially have prebiotic fiber. And again, remember that was on our biology slide. That's why it was there. That prebiotic fiber nourishes the microbiome. The microbiome then takes that prebiotic fiber, it goes through a fermentation process, and short chain fatty acids are then produced. And guess what? Those short chain fatty acids, guys, directly feed the enterocytes and help the structural integrity, help those tight junctions, help those cells stay close to one another. And this is really encompassing step 2 and step 3 that we're about to go through, repair the barrier in step 3. Okay. Now, repair and maintain the barrier. There's not a huge distinction between repairing and maintain the barrier. I think the biggest distinction was between that modulate and nourish the microbiome. And especially also with inflammation, stopping and controlling inflammation, there's a little less of a distinction here. And even in step 3, the most effective way for us to accomplish step 3 is actually to do step 1 and step 2 properly. But there are direct interventions in step 3 as well. So when we think about repairing the gut. We think about things like phosphatidylcholine, bovine immunoglobulins, slippery elm licorice. These interventions provide direct structural support. There's not a whole lot of, what we understand, even like aloe vera, for example. We don't have a whole lot of evidence of what we can do to directly repair the barrier other than step 1 and step 2. But then maintaining the barrier, these are things like us avoiding really intensive emulsifiers that mess up that beautiful lining of mucus, that mucus lining that we have in the gut. That can be, even things like washing your dishes with a little less soap, really getting that soap off your dishes is something that's really, really important. Things like elemental diets, food texturing, making sure that you're eating like a baby, okay? You're not gonna feed your 3-month-old, your 6-month-old, huge carrot, okay? You're gonna chop it up at the very least, or even better, that's why baby food looks like baby food. Your gut is a baby's gut right now, especially when it has open wounds in it with IBD. And even, again, elemental diets and fasting. So again, we'll go through all of this value that I'm giving. Like, just guys, so many interventions that we can take. Okay, we can think about fasting, medications. Again, anti-TNF medications have been shown to repair and maintain the barrier. Herbs, marshmallow, slippery elm, licorice. Supplements, glutamine, especially for small intestinal Crohn's disease, phosphatidylcholine. There's been almost a phase 3 trial with phosphatidylcholine in a delayed release capsule, and it's too bad. I take it every day. I mean, it's too bad that it hasn't been further studied. Serum-derived bovine immunoglobulins are shown to be helpful. The SBIs also, I believe, might play a role in modulating the microbiome too. So lifestyle, of course, avoiding emulsifiers, as we discussed before. The ones that have been shown to be super harmful in IBD are polysorbate 80, carboxymethylcellulose, maltodextrin, carrageenan, titanium dioxide. Do not eat these. Just don't do it. I've heard one of my friends, he's a GI doctor, he says there should be warning labels on foods that contain these things. And I just want to say, again, just food texture, making sure you get that beautiful gelatinous sort of texture, things like papaya, for example, things like blueberries, things like avocados and bananas. And a quick note, just for you guys, if you're going to put bananas in your smoothie, there is some research to suggest that there is a enzyme in bananas that actually breaks down specific polyphenols and flavonoids that are found in blueberries and are found in different types of dark fruits, and that maybe we should think about eating bananas at a different time so we can get the maximum benefit from polyphenols and flavonoids. Side thought right there. All of these steps, guys, are interconnection. Each step influences the others, reducing inflammation, stabilizes the microbiome. A balanced microbiome reinforces the gut barrier, and a strong barrier prevents immune overreaction. Healing is not linear, okay? It is not linear, but it is a process, and it's cyclical in many ways, adapting the body's needs at every stage, and just about everything influences one another, and that's why we have this diagram, okay? Now, let's remember the IBD pathogenesis feedback loop. Here we go. You guys remember all of this. Now let's take a second and bring it all together. I just want to say, for the next slide, there's a lot going on. It is my favorite slide in the entire presentation. And I don't need you to memorize everything or see everything, but I really just want to show you how this all comes together in a systems-based way that's based in science. And that is the key to healing from IBD. So here we are. Let's put it all together. I'm going to make me a little smaller. Here we have the pathogenesis feedback loop, and we have all of the different interventions that interact with all of these different cytokines. And I might add that many of these interact with multiple cytokines, but we have our flavonoids and polyphenols, especially increasing IL-10, decreasing anti-TNF. We have, our first generation biologics down here that are targeting tumor necrosis factor alpha. We have targeted biologics like Entyvio that work to essentially stop the movement of T cells right here. We have glutamine, which we talked about helps with the small intestinal barrier. We have quercetin, which is working on reactive oxygen species. We have phosphatidylcholine, which is working on the barrier. Bone broth is as well. Curcumin is reducing TNF, second generation biologics are working on things like Stelara and Skyrizi are working on these interleukins here, 12 and 23 specifically. So many. We have to think about how all of these are coming together, and it's not enough, in my opinion, when there's severe IBD for us to just say, hey, let's just target one thing and let's just hope for the best. And, sure, we could just significantly target TNF, for example, and say that's all we're going to do, and we're going to continue to eat ice cream and junk food and not do healthy things, but there's only so long that that's going to work. Okay? The body is a connected system. Inflammatory bowel disease is a connected system, and we have to think about this in this systems-based way. And that gets to our next slide here. Andrew, you have given me all of this information here. We've gone through so many different things, but how do I really know? How do I really know what foods to eat, where to find the best doctors, what supplements to buy, how to get enough sleep? You can't just do everything. We have to be able to choose, and we have to be able to go through a process. So for this, guys, we need to take a step back. Here is our guiding philosophy: cultivating an environment conducive to healing. Now, I want us to think about this quote right here. It's from a legendary anthropologist, cyberneticist, and ecologist named Gregory Bateson, and he said, "The major problems in the world are the result of the difference between the way nature works and the way people think, and we can even extend that here to the way people behave." And like so many other chronic diseases, inflammatory bowel disease likely did not exist before industrialization. The biology of the condition clearly demonstrates how our modern environments initiate maladaptive changes to the microbiome, the immune system, and the structural integrity of the gut barrier to give rise to IBD. Now, remember, exactly. This is what's happening. It's not a coincidence. It is a direct result of what we as human beings have cultivated around us. So IBD is a very natural response. Here's how we can change our thinking. Understanding systems science. I'm going to give you this slide from an incredible book called The Science of Systems by a colleague and friend of mine. And he says, the central view of systems science, to think in terms of complex connections, offers the necessary perspectives to reconcile modern scientific findings and address problems facing the 21st century world. The systems view challenges ideas, largely originating in 18th century Europe and still present today, that nature is purely mechanistic, predictable, and made of disjointed components. Let's think about that. Is often how we have approached IBD, how modern medicine has approached IBD, how we as society have approached IBD, and instead we need to move to a systems model. Systems theory instead acknowledges emergent collective behaviors, chaotic patterns, and interwoven relationships between nature and society. And that's from David Sugar in The Science of Systems. Now, everything is connected. Here's my definition of systems thinking. It's the fundamental belief that the whole is greater or entirely different than the sum of its parts. You can't just add things together. Things have unpredictable consequences. There are delicate relationships where components are interdependent, with each component is a system in itself. These relationships are often invisible. We don't see them, guys. We don't, every time we, eat a processed food or we do something that's maladaptive, we might not feel it right away. Maybe we do feel it right away, but we don't feel the wavering consequences, the downstream consequences of such an action. And there are a number of physical and non-physical impacts on health. The things that are physical are like biology and medicine, or medication, signs and symptoms, what we are experiencing, exercise and nature around us, work and play, the house and home, diet and nutrition. And then there's non-physical, sensing and intuition. When you have a feeling about something, that's really important for us to listen to. Sometimes you just get a gut feeling that you have the right idea that you should take this supplement, that you shouldn't eat this thing. Listen to yourself. Friendships and love, thinking and feeling, stress and pain, time and energy, relationships, all of these things affect health. All of these things affect IBD. And we have looked at feedback loops now throughout this presentation, and we have inputs, they go into a system, and they have outputs. Systems spontaneously self-organize among the components, and they produce feedback loops that exhibit this phenomenon called emergence. Emergent patterns come out. So an emergent pattern, one of the emergent patterns is IBD. Okay? Stress, anxiety, the standard American diet, lack of exercise, wrong medications, the toxic environment, all of this stuff, they go into this perfect storm of causative factors of IBD, and then the emergent quality is IBD. And again, this is a continued feedback loop that IBD continues to cause more stress. It continues to cause bad food choices. It continues to cause strain on our relationships when one of us is sick. And then again, we have to figure out a way to interrupt these feedback loops. And you have to ask ourselves, how can we break this feedback loop? And what indeed is the most interdependent component? You can see that this one right here of this system that I've drawn here has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 connections, whereas some of these other ones only have 3 or 4. Where do we start? Well, guys, it's you, the human being at the center. You are the most interdependent component, and that is the basis of our philosophy. We will work with you to find your pattern of interventions, to bring them all together, to find what works in all of the tools of this program. And that indeed is the basis of what we do. And let me tell you about Systema Health and Systema IBD. Systema Health is a human-centric health company. We are poised to address the global epidemic of chronic disease and the subsequent massive shortcomings in our healthcare delivery systems, and that is our mission. Our name, Systema, is a whole consisting of several parts, the definition, a complex whole, a system, and the second word, it means harmony. We need more harmony. This word comes from Latin, and I really think we couldn't have chosen a better name. Our goal is to inspire our members to become an enhanced version of themselves, using principles of systems thinking and neuroscience through building powerful digital and physical environments. And again, the environment we are in is just so critical, and I think you have seen that now. Members can learn about the biology of their conditions. They acquire custom dietary and nutritional strategies, navigate through mainstream and integrative healthcare systems. They build personalized plans and much more to attain unmatched health, wellness, and achieve states of remission from chronic disease utilizing our proprietary framework called systems-based health coaching. Here is our vision. Our vision is to cultivate a global community where every person has access to seamless and integrated systems of health that nurture universal well-being, foster human connection, and empower individuals to reach their highest potential. Our mission is to dramatically reduce the prevalence and severity of chronic disease, improve health span, and promote happiness around the world by building the most robust, dynamic, and accessible healthcare systems humanity has ever seen. And that is what Systema Health is. And I want to tell you about the core values of Systema Health, the company, and how actually this integrates directly with Systema IBD themes. Health and well-being. We prioritize mental and physical health and their interconnection to the foundation of all that we do. And specifically with Systema IBD, we are human-centered. Guys, you are not just a number. You are not just a person who says, oh, okay, this medication comes net. You are not a statistic. You are an individual with emotions and needs and unique biological needs, unique emotional needs, and we address that every single day in our IBD program. Science and innovation. We embrace cutting-edge technology. We utilize what we call real-world data. Not everything is in a lab. And we promote evidence-based interventions to vastly improve patient outcomes. And again, Systema IBD, we have really worked to do the heavy lifting for you because there's going to be no more midnight research sessions, okay? We've already done it. We've gone through the research. We've summarized it for you. We're using cutting-edge AI models from all the different players that are involved in LLMs to essentially put this all together, to summarize it for us to pick the best interventions. But at the same time, the science can only tell us so much. We indeed have to put it to the test and put it to the test individually because one intervention for one person will be completely different for another. 3, curiosity. We nurture a culture of exploration, imagination, and constant learning. And this is totally based on what we believe, this idea of neuroplasticity, which is a core tenet of what we do, that the brain contains 100 billion neurons, 100 trillion synapses, guys, and the way they connect and adapt and are changing every second. Right now, your brain is changing. Synapses are being formed, strengthened, weakened, eliminated right now to form brain maps. And that is how you are going to change and learn. And we create environments that promote neuroplasticity. And that is the basis of also this concept called human potential, that we believe that every person is capable of incredible feats. Even, this is what makes human beings so extraordinary. Is this the scientific explanation is neuroplasticity, but it's also what we see, that when put in the right environments, when given the tools, that anyone can heal. Healing is possible. And more than that is possible, that you're going to be able to move up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, for example, and be able to really do what you want in your life and achieve your dreams. Just quickly, I want to just explain the basis of neuroplasticity. We have these two processes called long-term potentiation and long-term depression, and this is how synapses form and essentially how they become eliminated, how they become strengthened and weakened, like I was saying. And that is a critical process for us to understand. And even flavonoids and polyphenols are shown to promote neuroplasticity. Certain environments are shown to promote neuroplasticity. And that is why we believe so strongly. It's why I studied neuroscience. And it's why we so believe that really the key to healing from chronic illness is about putting patients in the right environment. And it's about putting them in an environment that will allow their brain to change on a biological level that we see here. 4, connection. We cultivate meaningful, inclusive, and diverse relationships and understandings between individuals, communities, and the environment. And this is another tenet of Systema IBD, that you will feel love and compassion and strength. Our community, these are the most courageous individuals I've ever met in my life. The things that some of us have been through and survived, we are in this together, and you will feel that every single day in our IBD family. Responsibility. We inspire individuals to take ownership of their health. At the end of the day, your doctor sometimes will not know what's best for you. I will not know what is best for you, and only you. And I want you to be able to take ownership of your health, to be able to be inspired, to see what's possible, design your own protocol, and that's what we do. Ownership of their health and recognize our collective duty to nurture and protect our planet. And that's a core tenet of what we believe in too, that our global environment, is also just as important as our internal biological environment. And I appreciate you guys hanging with me as we get a little just more abstract here. We're going to really bring it back to IBD, and you'll see that. Ancestral health is something that I think we shouldn't discount. We don't see certain diseases in peoples that live around the world that are living more simple lifestyles. And this is a whole field. I've attended incredible conferences at UCLA and around about ancestral health, and thinking about how our ancestors lived and how we can take inspiration from them in our modern environment, getting out in nature, being able to ground around the world, being able to eat the nutrient-dense berries and meats and foods that our ancestors ate in our everyday lives. The more we can live like our ancestors, the best in harmony with ancestral health and technology, we believe will be one of the keys to combating IBD and chronic illness around the world. Harmony. We strive to create alignment, unity, and balance within ourselves, our health, and the natural world. And I can't tell you how important that is. And as you know, thinking about things from a systems point of view, from a what we call first principles point of view, and I'll give you an example of that. First principles is this understanding that essentially we do things based on evidence and based on science and based on what we think is going to be the most efficient, not because we did something in the past or there's a process for that. For example, when I first asked my gastroenterologist why I was being put on 6-mercaptopurine, he said, well, we start with 6-mercaptopurine. I was like, well, why me? Why is Andrew being put on 6-mercaptopurine? What is it? He's like, well, we have a process for that. We start with 6-MP. And I was like, wait, and he just kept repeating that we have a process. This is just how we do things. And that doesn't fly anymore. That is not how we are going to heal the world. That's not how IBD is going to be healed. And that's why we take a systems and first principles perspective. And, one aspect of ancestral health is to rewild. We use the redwood ecosystem as a metaphor for health and a metaphor for IBD. Think of a path through the redwoods. The redwoods are strong and sturdy, and they've been there for a long time. There's incredible interactions between the flora and the fauna of the ecosystem. And even there's an incredible mycelium mushroom network underneath the forest floor of interconnection that we see. And actually, when one redwood tree is perhaps in a more nutrient devoid area of the soil or the forest, the other redwood trees use the mycelium network and actually send nutrients to the tree that is in need. And another aspect that we especially face in California, as you guys know, is the risk of wildfire. And wildfire to us represents disease. And wildfire is very healthy in some ways for the ecosystem, but it can get out of control very, very, very easily. And it can burn down the entire forest. But again, if we listen to the signals, if we listen to the little fires essentially within us that I'm talking about, and then we take action, this can actually be an incredible, sustainable process of rebirth and the growth of new organisms and the growth of us as human beings and of new tissue and of immune cells and of all the things that are required. So I want you to think of this just human health in general and IBD like a natural ecosystem. And for me, I grew up in the coastal redwoods of California, and that's why I use this. It's close to my heart. So sometimes when you're thinking, when you're stressed out, it helps to just come back and think of this metaphor. So I want to talk about how Systema works. It is a complete reconceptualization to approaching IBD. There are 3 cornerstones of Systema IBD. We have an incredible science-based curriculum. It continues to go in depth. We have a very amazing, compassionate community that we talked about. Like I said, these are just some of the most amazing, courageous individuals who you're going to meet soon. And we have expert-driven workshops, which are just absolutely incredible, led by both me and our team of science advisors and other professionals that are in Systema IBD. And there are more cornerstones to this. There are more than you're going to see. Some of them, I can't go through every aspect of this program, but we are truly taking the principles, the mechanism, the science, and applying the philosophy of the natural world to this through these 3 modalities. Here's an innovative spotlight. We have used a document called the Remission Master Plan. It has been absolutely revolutionary. Hundreds of people have filled this out, have used it, have then presented it to their doctors. And it's a whole new ballgame now with using AI to help you fill it out. This helps you keep track. And, some people like to use a method of tracking everything. They track everything they've eaten. They've tracked every meal. That can be often pretty difficult. This is a more global perspective that essentially helps you put everything on paper, see where things are at, and then help you to both interact with it and do a retrospective approach, say, hey, what were 3 things that might have caused symptom XYZ? And that we find is extremely helpful. And again, using specific targeted AI, doesn't matter which one we use, some are better than others, but we've essentially used and tested all of them with these LLMs. It can get to know you in this way, and it can help you fill this out. And also this is also now a vital communication tool between you and your GI doctor and between your other medical and health team. For example, my GI doctor said to me, oh my God, Andrew, you have made my life so much easier. I don't have to look through 1,000 pages of medical records. That's how doctors are still operating, by the way. And likely they will still operate like this for decades of just looking through thousands and thousands of pages of medical records. We have a better way of doing this, and this is just the start to it. And it's exclusively offered, this proprietary tool, in Systema IBD. And now, guys, I want to show you this other innovation spotlight called the Adaptive Dietary Framework. This is probably the most innovative dietary intervention that has ever been created because it's so simple and just so obvious. And this is exactly what one doctor recently told me. She was like, I can't believe we never thought of this before. But it's essentially a framework designed by the patient where you move through 3 different phases: a foundational phase, a stability phase, and an exploratory phase. In your stability phase with IBD, obviously common themes are you're going to be pureeing your food. For example, you're going to be eating all of the safe foods that you know really, really work for you. Okay, you're not going to be messing around. You're not going to be eating foods that scrape your gut lining or anything like that. For example, you might limit some probiotic foods in the foundational phase because even though they're good for you overall, they might cause acute inflammation. For example, I don't eat raw kefir in my foundational phase. I eat raw kefir in my stability phase because it's good for me globally, but it's a little too inflammatory for me when I'm in my foundational phase because I don't eat any dairy when I'm there. And then in your exploratory phase, we generally don't use the term cheating. We use exploring. We want you to eat a wide diversity of foods. If there's a food that you've been really wanting to eat and incorporate, we want to get you healthy enough where your body can take it. And, maybe there's some mild consequences to being able to do that, but you're a human being who needs to go out and travel, and maybe you want to go to Italy and eat pizza or pasta or do something. I want to get you to the point where you can basically, on a certain occasion, whether that's once a week or once every 3 days or once a month, that you get to be able to eat the foods that you want. And that's always our goal right there. And I'm not going to say more about this, but again, this integrates with the Remission Master Plan, with AI, with all of the different features in our program. So here's what you're going to master. We're going to go through this really, really fast because I think you've seen it, but this really puts it all together. Systems and biology, very obvious. It's the foundation. Understanding the science, systems thinking, you have seen it firsthand now in this micro course. Diet, nutrition, supplements and herbs, medications and healthcare, lifestyle and mindset. Let's keep it simple. Again, systems and biology, it is the absolute foundation. Do not skip on learning your biology. And I don't care if you don't know all the terms. As long as you have a general understanding of what is happening, that is what I care about. Diet, nutrition. Diet nutrition is so much the foundation. Obviously, there are other factors that we go through, lifestyle and all of that, but what you put in your body directly affects your health and directly affects the gut. And patients say to me all the time, how do the GIs tell me that diet doesn't matter? That makes no sense to me. Listen to yourself, listen to your intuition on this one. Supplements and herbs. Look, this is kind of a controversial one. I think we need to be very careful. I think some supplements and herbs can do harm, but overall, I think these are incredible tools, again, to supplement. Okay, diet and nutrition is certainly more important than specific supplements and herbs, but to then supplement your body in being able to heal. Navigating healthcare. Medications and healthcare. Understanding the mainstream medications. Systema IBD is the only program that I know of on the face of the planet that actually understands both all of the integrative sides to this and understands how to work with integrative doctors, but also understands Western doctors. We've presented to the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation and the Congress. We understand how GIs operate, how to communicate with them. We understand the biological mechanisms of medications. We understand which ones are more harmful than others, which ones have more evidence than others. It's like we got to know it all. And even if you decide that medications are not right for you, currently I don't take any immunosuppressive medications. I use a little bit of mesalamine. I use a little bit of budesonide and even a little bit of prednisone if I'm in a flare. It's really important to be able to have a great relationship with your GI and have a diverse healthcare team. And that's what I'll say on that. Lifestyle and mindset, neuroplasticity, mindset, it is the very basis of this. Obviously, lifestyle factors, sleep, exercise, even like just lifting heavy things, being able to just move your body is something that is so critical to longevity, to health. I can't advocate enough for these things. And again, these competencies are the foundation to you achieving remission from IBD. And Systema works. I'm just putting this slide up here to remind you that now you have the context of what went behind all of this science, here. This is why it didn't just magically work. It required a lot of thought. And I don't think what we are doing is rocket science. It's very difficult what we are doing, but it's very obvious what we are doing. It's not like crazy or, something that's wildly out there, like some new crazy miracle drug. No, it's just an obvious systems-based approach that requires a lot of work. And this presentation, this microcourse required a lot of work. Creating Systema IBD and Systema Health has required a lot of thought and a lot of work. And that's why we get these life-changing results. And I want you to actually meet the people that have benefited from this. This is an incredible video we made just a few years ago, but it's still extremely relevant with people from a previous version of Systema IBD called IBD Coach. And I'm going to play that video now, and then I'm going to give you some direct quotes from 3 people that were involved. Here we go.
My calprotectin was incredibly high.
I think at some of my worst times I was going 10, 11, 12 times a day.
And it was really impacting my ability to work, my relationships.
It is a very isolating disease because we don't really want to talk about your bathroom troubles to everybody.
There was a lot of mixed messages as far as what to do with diet, with supplements, with lifestyle.
I was told that I was not in good enough health to start trying to have a family, and I needed some help figuring out my body.
What's really unique about IBD coach members is the amount of commitment they put into educating and investing in their own health.
Looking at your past, looking at your present, looking at everything you ate, mind-body connection, the science. That's what I love about this program. It's just not one thing.
When it came to, the real deeper issues and the causes of my IBD, I would always just try and do it alone.
Being able to get on the calls with people who understand and support me, we all support each other, has just been priceless.
It's the first unique place I've found where IBD patients can find each other, work with each other, support each other, led by a great team of coaches and caregivers, and help each other move forward.
Within 6 months of joining the program, I was symptom-free.
There's no magic bullet in this disease, but there is an amazing resource and community.
I have the lowest calprotectin I've ever had since being diagnosed with Crohn's disease.
Without IBD coach, I would not be in remission.
Without IBD coach, I'm not sure we would be able to have this happy, healthy baby boy and this beautiful family. So thank you.
That video touches my heart. It is just so powerful. There's so many more people. I can't wait till we can actually make another one, but we're just focused on our current members right now. But I want you to meet Haley right now and hear her in her own words. Here she is. She says, I was diagnosed with UC in 2008. For 11 years, I had never achieved symptomatic or clinical remission, and I was having 15 to 20 bloody, very urgent bowel movements a day with a calprotectin of over 1,000. Systema focused on educating me out of my patterns and what I needed to change for my individual self. My remission master plan was a lifeline between myself and my medical team. My GI suddenly had all the relevant information about my diet, my stressors, my living situation, and all of the many medications and supplements I had tried in the past. Within 6 months of joining Systema, I was symptom-free for the first time in 12 years. I had UC. I was able to get pregnant and have a healthy pregnancy and delivery of a beautiful baby boy. That was who you met there. He's a lot older now, but he's amazing. This would not have been possible without going through Systema's process. Incredible story. Margaret's story. When I found Systema, I weighed 90 pounds. My calprotectin was incredibly high, over 2,000. My GI told me, you are very close to being dangerously in trouble. My husband and I felt that we were taking shots in the dark to see if anything could work. Margaret's husband was a physician, too, for example. The program outlines how to systematically look at what's going on in your body and what's happening with this disease, specifically the science behind this disease. That's what I love about this program. It says, let's take this enormous disease and let's break it down intentionally to figure out what's best for you. After joining the program, I started to steadily gain weight and my calprotectin slowly dropped from over 2,000 to 43. I have so much more hope with Systema. I love the fact that Systema will always be there for me no matter what phase of my disease or what process I am going through. That's Margaret's. And obviously she loves horses. All right. Now, Nikki. Nikki lives in Northern California. She's also incredible. Nikki says, I am a GI nurse in an endoscopy department, and I have Crohn's colitis. I was having up to 30 bowel movements a day, were waking me up throughout the night. Joint pain, night sweats, incredible crushing fatigue. I developed a lot of inflammation and stricturing in my colon. In the week leading up to joining Systema, I was recommended for a total colectomy. This is where she was when she joined. Systema helped me refine my diet by getting rid of the thought of, quote, illegal foods and certain foods being, quote, bad. They acknowledged that every single person is an individual, and that helped me figure out what foods were best for me. Now, if I'm starting to notice myself feeling symptoms again, I can go to my RMP and say, these are the exact steps that I'm needing to follow. I don't have to think about it or research anything. And I encourage you to research something if you want to, but we have done it for you. And I want you to do the things that you love in your life. Okay, back to Nikki here. Since joining Systema, my Crohn's has completely turned around. I am living my life again. I have normal bowel movements. I can eat. I have an appetite. I'm keeping my weight on. I can work and come home and still make dinner for my family. My calprotectin went from so high over 8,000, 99th percentile. It was undetectable by the lab down to 43, which is totally normal. And I think it's even lower than that right now. And I had an amazing discussion with Nikki at the Crohn's and Colitis Congress 2 years back. And again, she was just there on her own. I didn't even know she was there. And it was incredible that we were walking around to GI doctors while we were there. And they were both stunned that Nikki and I were in remission from Crohn's disease without being on biologics, without being on intensive medications. And again, that's not to say that these medications are not extremely useful and extremely safe, especially when combined with lifestyle protocols that we have in this program. But it just blew their mind that there was this other way of thinking about this condition that integrated both Western and integrative treatments. Guys, we see a future where human health and healing are embedded in the very core of who we are, where the daily practices of health, diet, lifestyle, mindfulness, love, connection, and science are as normalized and as widely practiced as the things we do without thinking every day. And I want you to think about that. That is what we are working towards. Systema is accepting new members from anywhere in the world. It doesn't matter where you are, you just need internet. Having a laptop is super helpful, but at this stage, you don't even need a laptop, okay? And we will be there, and you'll be able to come on the calls, be with us. If you need one-on-one support, we're gonna offer that to you, and it's a year-long program, okay? And you'll be able to go through it, and then if you wanna stay with us beyond that point, we make it really, really easy. The admissions team is ready for you, okay? Now, during your 45 to 60-minute private admissions interview, they generally go almost exactly that long. Sometimes they go a little bit longer if we have time. I am gonna respectfully listen and honor your unique IBD story. I wanna know what's going on. I wanna see again if you are a fit for what we do. And I still just wanna take that time to listen to you. So it's either gonna be me or a member of my team. We're going to give you a human-to-human overview of our dynamic curriculum, our loving community. We're going to highlight certain facts from the IBD literature and what we're finding in lifetime and what we are seeing currently. Because again, like I said, even in this presentation, I said, hey, a year or two ago, I wasn't so into modulating the microbiome. Now we're finding that this is actually a really important tool to modulate the microbiome in terms of nourish. So everything is changing, and we're going to give you that insight on the call. And I just, at the very least, regardless if you decide to, work further with us, I want to give you hope and inspiration. And if you walk away from it inspired, and you inspire other people and you inspire this mission, it's only going to help everyone. This is not a zero-sum game. This is a situation where everyone can win. And I would just, again, if you qualify, you can click below to schedule a call with me. I'd be honored to speak with you, and so would my team. And I just want to ask you, will you come on this journey with us? And I want to tell you about this incredible poem that I've written called Remission is a Way of Life. I put a lot of time into this. Some people hang this on their wall as just a sign of hope. And it's something that really conceptualizes and brings everything together. And I want to say your time is now. Now, this is our promise to you, okay? Before we go into the poem, this is our promise to you. Systema is a selective program. We can't take everyone. We only make offers of admission to those who will know they will benefit from our program and fit in seamlessly with our community. This is one of the reasons why we have such an amazing program, because each member brings a unique contribution that makes our program possible. If you opt to have a private admissions interview after our micro course and you believe that Systema is the perfect fit for you, we will do everything in our power to get you enrolled. I don't care what the barriers are. I will work with you. We have so many different ways to access this program. Accessibility is almost my top priority. It's my second priority behind making sure that everyone gets across the line. And if you are accepted in the program and you join the program, one reason why the success rate of this program is so high is literally because I just don't let people into the program who are not going to succeed. So if you don't get an offer of admission, I will give you other resources in order to help you, that like a program that might be a better fit. But I want to make sure that you can access this, that whatever your barrier is, whatever you need, if you need accommodations in some sort of way, anything, I will go over the top and I will do my best to get you in here. Okay. And that's my promise to you. And no pressure. If you want to, regardless if you join. Okay. And I really want to hammer that point in, that if you want to be here and we believe you're a fit, we're going to do everything possible to join, because we want you in our community and you will make us stronger as well as yourself. It's a win-win situation for everyone. And my gift for you is that if you schedule an admissions interview, not even if you're accepted for one, if you're accepted in the program or anything, I will literally send you these slides. You can have the slides. I will send them as a PDF. You can go through them. You can look through them. Again, you see how much time has gone into these slides. They are blood, sweat, and tears has gone into them, happy tears, okay? And you will get it. You'll get all the citations and everything that's about it, okay? And that's my gift to you. You just have to click the schedule button below. You'll schedule with us, then you'll get to a survey page, you'll fill out a survey, and you will automatically get the slides. So I feel that at this juncture, now you have two choices, okay? And the first is that you can take everything that you've learned today and you can take it and you can go on this journey solo. For some people, IBD is a personal, private fight. And I respect you. If that is the best thing for you, if you'd rather do this on your own, I'm not saying that it's not possible. You can take it. Some of you will even just take this micro course and all of the information and you will be fine. And this will be enough. But I would say for the vast majority of you that you will thrive in the community. You will thrive in our family. You will thrive in this ecosystem. You will be able to be updated on the latest research. You will feel a sense of belonging with us. And that's why I think the vast majority of you will benefit from taking that further step and joining us, having an admissions interview with me or one of the members of my team, and coming on this journey with us. And again, if you decide to do that and you decide to schedule a call and you're accepted and you take our invitation, it would be the biggest honor of my life to help you change your life, just like we have helped so many other people help themselves and become totally new humans in this program. Here is how I want to close this out. A few slides called Remission is a Way of Life. Remission from inflammatory bowel disease is not a destination, it's a way of life. You will not simply arrive there. You will live and breathe remission every day. Remission requires planning and awareness, strength and grit, a pronounced ability to adapt within new and challenging contexts and circumstances. Remission is like surfing down the face of a wave. It's a state of flow with your natural surroundings where harmonious freedom meets refreshing control, no longer resisting or fighting nature's power, but instead harnessing her energy for your mutual symbiotic benefits. Achieving remission from IBD does not require magic. It instead demands remarkable persistence and a new state of mind. This change will allow you to engage reasonable strategies based on scientific discovery and evidence. You will begin to reconcile and observe the delicate interconnection of human biology to the environment you inhabit. You will acknowledge yourself as an individual with unique life circumstances, needs, and dreams who will always require tailored interventions designed specifically for you and by you. You will learn that your condition gives you superpowers. As someone who has been diagnosed with IBD, you have extraordinary and rare abilities, allowing you to sense the makeup of your environment and to differentiate between what heals and harms you with a newfound precision. With your new realized superpowers, you will iterate continuously and make changes to your life that bestow robust states of healing and health into the very core of who you are. Embarking on the road to remission takes time, and the process is non-linear. You will encounter obstacles that you could not predict nor prevent. However, you must never give up or give in. And I can promise your health does not sleep and healing will not spontaneously arrive on your doorstep. Instead, you will intentionally harness the tools, the community, and the mindset to become a person who is stronger, happier, and more adaptable than ever before. At this time, remission will cease to be a far-off, unattainable destination. Remission will become your way of life. And only one last question I have for you. Are you ready to dive in? It's been an extraordinary honor to present this information and to be with you on this journey. Thank you very much. Hey everyone, Andrew Kornfeld here again. Okay, we made it through that. That was a lot of information. I want to encourage you to ask any questions. Feel free to email us. Feel free to just ask on the admissions call schedule below. Again, I'd love to get to know you, understand your IBD story, and feel free to just take a moment to take that all in. But I would encourage you to talk to us as soon as possible. The faster we can approach your IBD, the faster we can understand what's going on, the faster you can live the life you want. You can heal, be around the people you love, do the activities you love, travel the world, whatever it is. So have an amazing day, have an amazing evening, and thank you so much for sitting with me during this micro course. And it was great teaching you, and I'd love to get to know you. All right, have a good one.